very well. I see people in the chat asking, must we discuss this? Yeah, I think it's worth it. I think there's a lot to talk about here. And I think it's actually genuinely something that is worth, I just actually do want to actually address it, because there are so many dimensions to this that people are coming at from all angles. And so I wanted to cover a bunch of them, but I also wanted to give my view on it, because I'm the father of two daughters, right? So this kind of thing really does play on my mind, because the last thing I would want to see is one of my daughters doing something like this, right? So it's just sad. Karamba, you're in the chat. It's just sad, right? Everything about this is sad, and a damning indictment of the state of our civilization generally, and what social media has done as well. Right? So this, from 100 angles, yeah. This is something that generally I find quite depressing, actually, right? So, yeah, there are so many things about this that I find just gross. And so I guess we'll just go through this Daily Star article. So for anyone outside of Britain, the Daily Star is it's a left-wing rag, right? A left-wing shit rag for the plebs. But I think it's left-wing anyway. Or am I thinking of, maybe I'm thinking of the Mirror. I think this is a left-wing version. But basically you get like the Sun, the Star, the Mirror. You get a few others. I don't know if it's left-wing, actually. It might not be one of the left-wing ones. I never read it, right? I never read it. Nice shirt. Well, thank you. I'm not wearing my tie, unlike at the office. I took the tie off. But the response to this has been mad. And I'm looking at this and it's like, okay, if you were to be like, right, okay, I want freedom, and then something like this happens, do we then have a conversation about the limits of freedom? Right? Is this a good time for a conversation about the limits of freedom? Because it seems to be directly implied in the fact that everyone has responded to this negatively. Like everyone from every political persuasion. I've not really seen anyone who's in favor of it. Right? So are we all agreed that this is the excess of freedom? Right? Yeah, okay, you are completely and absolutely atomically free to do whatever it is you want, even if it's something like this, and everyone's like, oh, shouldn't do that. It's like, okay, right. So at least we've found a border, a barrier, in which everyone agrees that at least on a moral level, this is not right, and this isn't what we should be doing, right? And so I thought we'd go through just some of it, because I watched the documentary on it today, and there's been a lot of commentary on it. I thought it might just be worth us watching a little bit of it and going around some of the things that are surrounding this, because this feels not, I don't know how to describe it. This feels important, right? It feels like there is something about this that is a kind of tipping point. That it's like, okay, look, if we're all okay with this, and this is just the way things are in the future, like she's going to set an example to other young women and men going on into the future. And this is just what normal is going to be, right? Like if we're not shocked by this and we don't say there's probably a limit you've crossed, a threshold you've crossed here that ought not to have been crossed, then we agree that there are no thresholds, that there's nothing off limits. And, you know, by what standard are we going to be able to criticize anything coming in the future, right? So this is from like a couple of months ago. Lily Phillips, 23, says she'll be in London in October, where she'll sleep with a century of her followers, 100 followers. And she says she has thousands of volunteers. Right. Okay. I mean, Jesus Christ. So I watched a bunch of podcasts with her on just to get a feel for what's going on. And apparently she was in university. She started an OnlyFans. Now, obviously she did, because, again, there's just no morality outside of do you consent, right? That's the only thing that exists in the modern liberal West. And actually, I think that maybe that's not sufficient to a proper and holistic moral system. Actually, consent is important, but there are also things that are moral that you don't get to consent to that are also things that you have to be careful of and pay attention to and accept contain moral content. And therefore, you need to be deferential to these things, respectful to these things. Mind these barriers, stay within the lines on this, or else you go and do something that's terrible. And in fact, your relationship with your parents is one of those things. And the fact that she says, it'll make my daddy proud, it's like, I don't believe you, right? I don't believe you. And I'm absolutely certain that your dad must be ashamed. And if he's not ashamed, then he is the problem. He is the one who has created this issue, right? Hawkticus. It doesn't even sound like fun. It sounds like a massive headache, aside from the moral points. Yeah, we'll get into the logistics of it in a minute. And again, I'm not thrilled to be talking about this, right? I'm not thrilled to be talking. Like, I didn't talk about this way back then, but it's become such a focal point for like people's obvious problems with modernity, and nobody is properly articulating what the issue is, because her moral justification from this comes entirely down to, well, everyone signed consent forms and I consented to it, therefore what's the problem? And everyone's like, this is disgusting. There's something deeply wrong about this. And so whatever this is, this must be in a framework that's not a standard liberal framework. We must be thinking in broad, deep, sentimental, traditional terms. I think this is a good way of like showing the difference, right? So I just we'll get into it, Nigel. So she literally just canvasses to her 450,000 Instagram followers. She's like, hey guys, do you want to come to London and have sex with me? And it's kind of wild how she doesn't, she like fast tracks ones that have got an STD check, but that's not really a primary concern. I mean, she makes them use condoms, so I guess there's that. But again, there's the only thing that she does is make sure they're 18 so they can legally consent. And it's like, right, okay, mental. But anyway, she again, the way the Daily Star framed this is, oh, she's gonna probably take her 15 hours to get through her marathon shagathon. It's like, okay, but is something terrible not happening here for the people who write for the Daily Star? And they're not bothered about this. And she expects to make 50 to 100 grand for efforts on the day, because of course she's filming it to put on her OnlyFans. Now, I've seen in other articles, I don't have the article up here, but I saw in other articles that she was saying she makes 600 grand a month. It's like, how is 600 grand a month not enough, right? Park that for a second. What difference does it make someone who makes 600 grand a month to make another 100 grand? Like, genuinely, like, what difference does that make? Like, oh, I made 700 grand a month, and what did you do? I had to shag 100 guys in a day. I mean, she'll probably make more than 100 grand, right? Out of just the amount of publicity that she's had from this. I don't doubt that her OnlyFans is popping off, as the kids say, and she's going to get loads and loads of subscribers. She'll make tons of cash. Okay, but you were making tons of cash anyway. So is that really what this is about? Now, I asked my wife, why does she think that she's doing this? And my wife was like, she's doing it for attention. She's doing it for attention. And I did see a clip that I lost. I'll see if it might be in one of these articles. But she's doing it essentially. Oh, here we go. Talking about the reasons for her mammoth quest. It says, OnlyFans is so oversaturated now. It feels like every other girl has an account. It takes a lot to stand out among them. So to prove myself out of the lot and make my daddy proud, I'm going to bonk 100 of my fans in a day. It's my most highly requested video, so why not do it to the extreme? Well, I mean, there are lots of reasons, obviously, why actually you shouldn't do that. But this is the thing, right? And this is why my wife, and she didn't know any of this, right? She'd just seen it going around on social media and was like, oh God, and so I asked her, she's doing it for attention. Precisely what she's saying here. Well, it's oversaturated. I need to stand out. I need to be the center of attention. And don't get me wrong, she has made herself the center of attention. She has made it so literally everyone's like, holy shit, what is wrong with this woman? So, and apparently she just has no moral compass other than, well, they signed consent forms, so don't worry about it. Anyway, so she's doing it to stand out, right? And she says, if you really want to kill it, you need to break the internet and do something outrageous. So this is about validation and stardom on social media, right? Like, again, I don't see anyone talking about the social media component of this. And this is a genuine issue, right? There's lots of different people who are not particularly stand out, like bright stars in many different fields, who do something crazy that is harmful to themselves in order to essentially just get loads of attention for a short period of time. Like, who's that Nikado Avocado guy who ate loads and became really fat and then lost it or something, right? Like that's because he's utterly mundane. In every other way, they're just completely mundane. And there's nothing special or interesting about them. And so they have to do crazy shit like this in order to feel like they are special on the internet. It's like you want to feel special on the internet? The internet is literally all people at this point. Like, only boomers aren't on the internet. Even then, they're on the internet. They just don't really understand the internet and how it's affecting young people. But this is what internet natives become, right? Someone who's 23 has never remembers a world without social media. I remember a world without mobile phones, and I'm only 45, right? That's how quickly this technology is going. And like, so what was it? Social media was like 2006, 2009, something like that, when it first came out. And I didn't use it. I didn't think I signed up for like Facebook until like 2011. I signed up to YouTube at 2011, so I was quite a late adopter of these things. And this is these people's world. This is their reality. Their perception of things is based on social media and based on the excessive bourgeoisification of the world. Now, one thing that really struck me in Rousseau's Discourse on Inequality is the way he described bourgeois man compared to the savage man. Right? This is a fascinating dichotomy that I don't think I would have noticed on my own. But I realized I'm in many ways, I'm kind of one of the savages, because I'm actually not that bothered about other people's opinions at all. And I do what I think is right. And only the people who are closest to me, they're the people whose opinions that matter. The opposite is the bourgeois man who lives within the opinions of others. If other people think ill of them, they think ill of themselves. And it's like, okay, but what about your own personal virtues? Are you not like, well, no, I did this, I did that, and therefore I am confident I am a good, decent, and virtuous person. And so whatever they think is not actually reflective and does not have an impact on the behavior I exhibit. And that's where my moral courage comes from, right? That's been my perspective on things. And this makes me kind of a savage in this perspective. But this kind of excess narcissism of being right now, I really want everyone to look at me and recognize me, to think of me, and I will do insane things that will literally haunt them forever. And at 23, right? At 23, like, man, when I was in my early 20s, I'm sure I must have done loads of fucking stupid things. And I'm glad that the internet wasn't really a big deal back then, right? The internet was kind of primitive. You didn't use it for that much. You downloaded torrents, maybe. I probably downloaded Futurama on it or something like that. I didn't outsource my personal validation, my sense of validation to the internet. Admittedly, I didn't become a multi-millionaire prostitute, so, missed out there. But I mean, this is genuinely just crazy. And anyway, so she was apparently, when she was 19-year-old student at university, she was exchanging raunchy pics of herself for cash. And she thought, well, I may as well make money for it. She was just giving people these pictures. Like, okay. And the thing is, I'm not even very prudish. I'm not even very puritanical. There's a reason it's the oldest profession in the world for a reason. Like it's something that some women want to do and some men want to pay for, right? I don't like it, but I understand why prostitution exists and I accept it. And I'm not even that judgmental about it. But the problem is then when you get on the internet, right, you have now an unlimited audience. So you have OnlyFans, which is just literally an unlimited number of men who can essentially be patrons of this prostitute. It's like, okay, so that makes the prostitutes insanely wealthy. Because I mean, at least before they were hemmed in by locale, right? You had to be in a proximal distance to the woman, and there was just time, right? It was you surely could, even if you saw like a dozen clients in a day, okay, fine, but you're not making 600 grand a month, probably. I assume. I actually don't know, but I assume that this like limited just the raw amount of wealth a prostitute was allowed to extract from society, or just capable of extracting from society. But of course, when this is yeah, there's still time. Only Lotus when. Yeah, my digital prostitution is intellectual, thankfully. I don't feel so bad about that. But the digitalization and instantaneous and universal distribution of it means that she can upload a photo or a video or whatever it is, and however many hundreds of thousands of men can buy it, she makes unbelievable amounts of money, and she has that many clients. And it's like, okay, that's, again, we weren't prepared for this. When Tim Berners-Lee, I think it was, made the World Wide Web, he wasn't like, I'm going to make so many filthy rich prostitutes out of this. Like, he didn't think about it. He was thinking, wouldn't it be good if people could communicate really, really quickly? It's like, well, yes and no. You know, there are definite advantages, but there are definite disadvantages. There are definite things that this does to our civilization. And Tim Berners-Lee was, not a young chap when he invented the World Wide Web, and now he's, getting on a bit. I don't think he's dead yet. But the point is, he came from a society that wasn't stewing in constant social media narcissism. He came from a world where people had to exist in reality and deal with one another in reality. And so now we're not in that world. Now we've got people who just don't understand that this wasn't always a part of reality and can't separate their personal, their physical and digital lives. And it's like, right, okay. I mean, that's okay. That's the way things are. And then you get I need to stand out. The market's saturated. Yeah, because every half decent looking woman is an OnlyFans. So it's like, right, okay, now you need to stand out. Now you need to do the most ridiculous things. It's like, okay, but do we have to allow this? Right? Do we have to, as a civilization, as a culture, as a society, do we have to say, yeah, no, this is totally fine, and if you don't like it, well, how does it affect you? It's like, well, I think it affects me when essentially being a prostitute is the most highly paid job a woman can possibly get. Right? When it gets non-stop wall-to-wall social media and physical media coverage, like, it makes this woman insanely wealthy and famous. Yeah, I think it affects me to live in that civilization. But also, it's not about me. It's about my daughters. I'm not worried for me. I'm not going to buy her OnlyFans. I'm not going to be personally affected by it. I'm not going to go to her 100-man shagathon. But I do worry about the kind of thing that it reflects down to other women, particularly the girls in my life. I worry about the sort of thing they're thinking. What kind of... I mean, like, we are basically the most debauched civilization that has ever existed at this point. Or at least, if we're not quite there, we're definitely getting there. I realize that, worse things did happen in the Weimar Republic and at the very height of the Roman Empire, but they're hardly aspirational places to try and end up, right? It's hardly where we want to be as a civilization. We can hardly look ourselves in the mirror and go, yeah, no, we're glad that we have all this freedom. This is what this freedom was for. This woman's freedom to have sex with 100 men in a day and become a multi-millionaire off it. If that's not freedom, I don't know what is. So, okay, I think there's more to it than that. Anyway, so she says, I absolutely love sex, and without OnlyFans, I'd be doing this anyway. So in my mind, I'm just capitalizing off my usual behavior. Right. Like I said, oldest profession in the book, but normally it was at least limited somewhat, and it's easy to say these things, right? It's easy to say, well, I'm just going to enjoy this and that's it. But does the fantasy of a thing normally line up with the reality of the thing? I'm not sure it does. But anyway, she says, I had a beautiful upbringing with supportive and loving parents who continued to do so throughout my career as a porn star. It's like, okay, but are they that supporting and that loving if they allow their daughter to do this to herself? Like, I would consider myself not a loving father if I didn't take objection to this. Like, I would think I had failed. And one of the things that is most difficult to explain to people who don't understand what the issue here is the concept of innocence, right? The concept of innocence. Now, I'm not saying that a 23-year-old woman has to be innocent. What I'm saying, though, is that the concept of innocence is a good way of understanding the kind of metaphysical state of affairs you exist in until you don't, right? So the reason that we tell children that Santa Claus brings their presents, and everyone agrees Santa Claus brings the present. You would never, to like a 6-year-old child, say it's not Santa Claus, right? Because you understand that you would be popping that bubble of innocence in which they live. You'd be changing the nature of their world. You'd be changing their ontological status in the world, their relationship with the world. What the world is to them is warm, fuzzy, and magical. And everyone knows, no, you have a duty to protect that, right? And so we all accept that there is a concept of innocence. And obviously, this is why we have age of consent and stuff like this, right? But the Santa one is a less gross way to give the example. We accept that there is the concept of innocence and children are born into it. And there's also the concept of a kind of dignity, right? The sort of dignity a person has before they have debauched themselves. They carry this dignity with them and everyone can see it. And this is why we have all of this kind of loaded language. She happily calls herself a slut. It's like, okay, but that's actually bad. That's actually a judgmental thing. And you saying, well, I've come to peace with it. It's like, okay, well, we're all still going to have opinions on this. And also, even if you don't really care about our opinions, and I think you do, actually, which is why you're trying to be as vain as possible, the nature of losing your dignity in this way is going to affect you later on in your life. And the fact that you aren't cognizant of that, or not bothered by that, is kind of why other civilizations treat our women the way that they do. Like, they think all Western women have this kind of attitude about their own dignity as women. And I don't think they do. I think actually most women do have a very strong sense of their own dignity and don't like it when you challenge it. I mean, that's why I got in trouble for such a long time, because I was essentially not respecting a woman's dignity. And I think that is important. And it's important for you personally to maintain. Anyway, so this was the documentary by a guy called Josh Peters. I've never heard of him before, so I don't know anything about him. But I watched the documentary and he obviously was sensing this question of dignity, even though he didn't frame it in this way. But he was obviously sensing this because throughout the thing, you could tell there was a kind of morbid fascination on his part. Like, he was just like, okay, this is bizarre and gross, and there's something about this I don't approve of. But he's like a young guy, he's not in his 20s himself. He didn't have the moral toolkit to properly assess this, I think. And this is just not great, right? This is just not great. And so I watched this, like, with a kind of mounting horror, frankly. Anyway, let's watch some of it together, and I'll talk you through the bits that bother me.
I'm Lily Paulette, and today I'm getting ran through by 100 guys.
Gross. Absolutely gross. Anyway, about 19 and a half minutes in, I've got some notes. She tells us how she's a feminist.
Yeah, 100%. I don't mind being called a... I'm sleeping with 100 guys in a day. That is the definition of a Charlie.
Would you refer to yourself as a feminist?
Yeah. At the end of the day, doesn't feminists mean like you just want equal rights for boys and girls? And yeah, I do what I want and I do it because I enjoy it. I think there are obviously some women that maybe go into it because they have to or need the money and stuff like that, or they're kind of coached into it by men. But my personal experience is I've only ever felt empowered by the fact that I'm making money off something that I think guys will do anyway. Like, yeah. Guys are always going to sexualize me, so I may as well try and profit off that bit.
Again, the way women carry themselves affects the way that men treat them. Men are sensitive to a woman who protects her own, guards her own dignity. And being raised in a feminist culture as a feminist, well, she's not really aware of that. Well, men and women are the same. Well, maybe. Men don't have to worry about their sexual dignity, actually. At least not when it comes to dealing with women. Obviously, it comes to men, which is why men call each other gay all the time, as a pejorative to make sure you're not violating and losing your own dignity in that way. But when it comes to men and women, we're different. We're different. Women can't really take away men's sexual dignity, at least not very easily. It'd have to be something insanely degrading. And she's just, well, I just don't understand the issue. And it's like, okay, but the fact that everyone has responded to this in this way shows you surely that there is an issue. And just because you don't understand it doesn't mean that you should just be flippant about it and just play it off. Well, I mean, whatever. She doesn't know the kind of people she's attracting. I'll try and keep the number of clips I play down. She doesn't know the kind of people she's attracting. She didn't know that you could get AIDS from fluid transfer, because apparently she was letting a lot of these guys ejaculate in her mouth. It's like, oh God, that's just okay. But anyway, at about 29:50, the first guy arrives, and they're both, he and the documentarian are early, and the other, her team and her haven't arrived yet, and so they have a little talk. Let's have a watch of a bit of it.
This is where it's happening. I don't know where Lily and the guy are to be seen. Do you guys want to get some cover?
Stunt was set to take place.
She's asked us to not be around the property so we don't draw attention to it.
So I asked lucky participant number 1 if he wanted to go for a stroll while we waited for Team Lily to arrive.
So you're obviously a subscriber of Lily's on OnlyFans?
I'm going to be honest with you, it was only when she said.
So you got a text, but they sent the address quite late, didn't they?
Yeah, just this morning. Funny, like on the text it was like, you know, if you have any friends who'd like to take part, and I was like, oh, it's one of my motivations for coming here.
Yeah.
Like, is it gonna happen, you know?
Yes.
Am I gonna get mugged? It's on the Circle Line.
Yeah.
I go to VNA after.
Finally, Lily arrived.
Hello. Lovely to meet you. Lucky number 1.
An hour behind schedule with a security guard on the door, we were allowed inside.
Nice to meet you.
Hello, how you doing? Fair enough.
Everyone get dated now. Let's get going.
It's a lovely house. I like that big mirror.
Yeah.
I don't know where to put myself. I feel like just float. Yeah.
Right, so the first guy turns up, and obviously he doesn't want to be filmed. He doesn't want his voice on there. And as you can see, there's a weird awkwardness about all of this, right? This is so bizarre and unnatural. There are no socially understood protocols for how to deal with this situation. And why the hell would there be, right? This is like, we're not watching the full dog. Don't worry, I'm just clipping, like getting a few bits out for you. But it's genuinely nauseating. As you say, look, everyone is freaking out, basically, but trying to maintain their calm. And you can see the people involved themselves are weirded out. There's a strange atmosphere. There's no plan. There's just very, very bizarre. And like, there's a bit of 36 minutes in where he talks to one of the guys who does it, right? And I thought, again, this is just fascinating to me. Absolutely fascinating.
£800 this morning going in there.
Yes, especially when I saw all the guys, the cute.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was definitely nervous.
Were you worried that maybe some of the other guys aren't going to get an STI check? Or?
A little bit, but also I think the risk for the guys is maybe less high than for her. This gonna has to be the most expensive shag ever.
Really?
Yeah.
How much?
200 to get tested.
So this guy who's talking has come from like Switzerland or something, and he's a subscriber to our OnlyFans and has been for years. So he's like parasocially invested in her. Unlike the first guy who wasn't. He was just I don't know how he, no idea how he got into it.
50 for the flight, maybe 800.
£800 and worth it?
Yes, yes, without a doubt.
How are you doing?
Yeah, it's like, I thought it was. Oh yeah.
During her breaks.
However, we were able to speak to another man as he left the Airbnb, although he seemed shaken by the experience.
How are you feeling?
It's not something I'd normally do, but I saw it and I thought I might as well.
Yeah.
I think I saw it and I just thought, fucking might as well just do it.
And like, how long did you get with her?
She said 5 minutes, and then halfway through she said she hadn't started the timer, so she said like 5 minutes from now. Which was all right.
So you got some extra...
Yeah, just an extra time.
Do you know how many guys have gone before you?
No idea. No idea.
Yeah, like, is that one?
Well, maybe, yeah, but I don't really know. You know, I just thought...
Are you happy you did it?
A little bit. I'm just a bit nervous, really, if anyone find out. My dad would kick me out straight away.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I mean, the shaking hand when he's trying to drink from the bottle, I just thought was incredible. Like, you know, this is something so outside of the realm of normalcy that it's just mental. And the fact that he was like, my dad would kick me out. And it's like, you know, are you happy? A little bit? Like, a little bit. You've got this tiny amount of happiness. And then you've got my dad would kick me out. I'm fucking shaking. I'm nervous. Like, this wasn't something that you're very proud of doing. So why are you doing it? Like, what are you doing? Why are you, like, is this what you were after? And I'm not sure that it was. I'm not sure these guys got out of this what they thought they were going to get out of it. And again, the fact that he didn't know, you can tell for him there is a threshold that's been crossed why he's shaking so much. It's just like, look, this is something that's really wrong, even though you all consented to it. And that's why you're all acting this way. At the beginning, they're like, oh yeah, we don't want you hanging around outside the thing because we don't want to call attention to it. Well, what's going to happen? Like, technically, they're not, I don't think they're doing anything illegal. Like, I don't think any of this is prohibited by law. And so what difference would it make? Well, the difference is it'd be social. It'd be social penalties, like his dad kicking him out and all these other things. And so it's like, well, why do this? Especially if you only got a little bit of joy out of it. Like, this is mental. It's absolutely mental to me. Anyway, at one point, like, so I think it's at the end where the cameraman goes into the room where she's been into one room. It's covered in, I'm not going to show it. It's covered in condom wrappers. And the cameraman gags. Like, he was like, bleh, and I'm like, it's so fucking disgusting. So disgusting. And what's interesting is that during this, right, there's this woman. Now, this is football legend Matt Letizier's daughter-in-law. She started an OnlyFans, and he essentially has exiled her out of this, right, out of his life. And she said, this is crazy, shouldn't probably be doing this, and it's going to smell disgusting, which is fascinatingly prescient. But like I said, in fact, I've got it here. Like, Matt Letizier has, like, just essentially cut them out of his life because he's like, well, no, this is wrong for you and your wife, his son and his wife, to make money using OnlyFans. So he's done the right thing as a dad. He's like, look, I have to object to what you are doing here. This is wrong. Why are you doing it? And so, I mean, at least someone's done the right thing, but it's just crazy how this is so normal among the young generation. They've got no moral standard, or at least many of them. Obviously, there are going to be others who do, but many of them have been so morally desaturated, right? They don't view themselves as people with dignity. They view themselves as a commodity that is perfectly fine to sell on the internet. And that's the sort of generational difference between Matt Letizier and his own children, is that they don't feel like they have something they're supposed to protect, right? Something sacred about themselves that gives them dignity and worth, that they, and if they did think that, then they can just exchange it for a measly £3,000 a month. £3,000 a month? That's not enough, is it? I mean, okay, 600k a month, maybe I could understand. But the fact that, again, this kind of moral desaturation to merely well, I consented to it and they consented to it, therefore everything about this is fine, I don't think is true. I don't think it's honest, right? And I think that the dishonesty of it is seen in the documentary towards the end. So, and again, like she might be an OnlyFans prostitute, but she's like, there's something wrong with sleeping with 100 men in a day, and I don't think you should do it. And I think this is going to psychologically affect you, right? So anyway, about 43 minutes in, she has done the deed. She's 100 men down. And like I said, I'm going to skip a few things. But they're talking about it afterwards, and I just found it really sad. I just found it really, really sad that she thinks the way that she thinks about this.
Self-comfortable, take off your trousers, and we're going to have a fun time. And I'll give them the phone camera. I'll just say, I'm guessing you don't want your face in it.
Yeah.
And if they don't, it'll be POV.
But then, like, once they're having sex and it's like condom on type thing.
Yeah.
It does smell a lot like sex. I mean,
Not really sore.
okay.
It's more just tired. My eyes sting like nothing else. You know, I've definitely seen some spunk today, Jesus.
The last time you ate?
I had I think I had a yam yam. Yam yam, is that what they're called? A little pastry. And I think I had a sandwich, and that was and then the rest come.
So she's got, you can see this kind of narrative playing in the front of her mind, right? She's saying things that she wants to believe and is committed to. And so she's maintaining this narrative at the front of her mind. But everyone has noticed that the look on her face, now don't worry, she's been doing this for 15 hours or something, so I imagine she's fucking tired. But there's a kind of sadness about her that everyone has noticed. Everyone has noticed this.
It's not for the weak, girls, if I'm honest. It was hard.
And as soon as you start asking her questions about it, and she has to be introspective about it, I think they're called yum-yums, not yam-yams, but anyway, as soon as she starts thinking about how to be introspective about this, then you can see it's not just the narrative at the front of her mind that she's consciously thinking about, right? There is clearly something animalistic and human underneath that narrative that is saying and trying to be heard, even if she has been somehow trained by modern life and the way that our society is to essentially not really be able to see it and not really be in touch with it, in contact with the soul in her own chest, in her heart. And this is where it starts getting emotional for her. Is that okay? But hang on a second. No, stop. You love doing this. This is your dream job. You're thrilled with it. You're making tons of cash. You're the center of the attention on the internet. You're having a great time with all these guys according to the narrative at the front of your head. Why are you about to cry? What is there to cry about if this was all totally fine? And, you know, it's not for the weak, girls. Oh, I bet it shows a remarkable amount of strength to be able to mentally put yourself through this, let alone physically. Even though she said physically she wasn't that sore. It's like, okay, great. But, like, you know, what is it underneath the narrative on the top of your mind that is trying to be heard? Like, it seems that it's a kind of disgrace that you're doing to yourself, and it's hard to put it into words because it's not something we normally think about, but I think anyone who lived in the pre-modern era would have perfectly adequate language for what I'm trying to describe, right? Let's watch some more.
I don't know if I'd recommend it.
Why not?
I think if you're a different type of girl, it's very like, it's kind of like being a prostitute in a sense of like, it's just a different feeling. I don't know how to explain it. Like,
it's not like just having sex with someone.
Yeah. Just one in, one out. Like, it feels intense.
Like more intense than you thought it might.
Definitely.
When she starts looking inwards at this event, she begins to cry. Like, you know, come on, are we Are we just going to like act like, oh, well, you know, this is what she chose. Did she choose this? Like, is this just something that is genuinely her best interest and her genuine heartfelt desire? Or is it that we as a culture are so permissive of people's freedom to choose that in order to get social media attention, to be the center of attention of everyone on earth, she's arrived at this point where honestly she seems kind of like the victim of our society and the fact that we allow this choice to be made, right? And so it's just like, okay, that's kind of crazy. And it seems that there's something about the Britain in particular, from about the year 2000 onwards, where the moral content of the civilization, if you go back and look at like in the 90s, you've got a kind of rich morality, right? It does kind of pervade everything. And in America, this probably happened in the 1980s with people like Gordon Gekko. But there's it's a kind of fluid that we move through. It's probably a bad metaphor to use. But it's a kind of like heavy substance that you can feel in the country, that there's morality around us. And it seems that in the 2000s, this just got drained out. And so it's like, well, did you agree with it? Well, you must be fine with it then. It's like, okay, but I think that morality is a kind of projection of our subconsciouses, our psyches into the world around us. And we feel it, right? It's why a place feels right or wrong when you go into it. You know that something's off when you walk in somewhere. And something like, imagine what the feeling the guy, Josh Peters, is getting from walking into this. He must be like, this is a cursed room at this point. Even if he wouldn't express it that way, I'm sure he would have like, yeah, no, this is terrible. And he doesn't agree with this at all, by the way. He's doing this out of a kind of morbid curiosity. But you can feel that there's, again, this sort of, in her mind, this kind of desaturation and disconnect from a kind of essential morality that is not based on rational thought. It's based on sentiment, feelings, and lived experience. And she's just essentially desecrated that to the point where just asking her a few questions about what she's just done, even though rationally she's totally fine with it all and she wanted it, now she's crying over it. Let's go for some more.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Just take
Yeah, 1 minute.
I mean, look at his face. Look at his face. Like, it's like he's talking to a rape victim. It's like he's talking to someone who's the victim of this. And at one point in this, she says that she disassociates. In fact, that's in a minute, in fact. We'll get to it.
I think I was you know, when I talked to you last, like I was not nervous. It was like the day before. I was like, oh, I'm so nervous. But it was good. It was more, I guess the interactions when like I'd have to stop them early and like you'd have to stand on business and be like, I'm so sorry, you got to go. And like the awkward interaction of like you feeling pressure to have to make them come if like you haven't spent enough time with them and feeling like they didn't, like you didn't give them a good time because like they only got 2 minutes.
And that's what's making you feel emotional, is that maybe you think you didn't give some guys a good enough time today?
Yeah, and it's hard, I think, having the interactions with them when they're like, what, you're not going to make me finish? I've come all this way. Like, kind of like guilt tripping me a little bit. I felt bad, like some people just travel so far, like I didn't want to give them a shit time and like come away from this and be like, oh, that was shit.
I'm not very persuaded by that, I have to say. I mean, you know, I can't prove it either way, and she would say, no, that is how it is, so there we go. But I'm not terribly won over by that. I was just really concerned that I didn't give the 77th guy the great time that I gave the third guy or something like that. Like, I don't know, man. I'm just not buying it. You just call me skeptical. I don't think that's brought you to tears. I don't think that's what brings someone to tears. Like, you know, everyone's had disappointing sexual encounters, and a woman doesn't normally break down in tears because she disappointed you in the bedroom, right? And on a one-on-one basis where it's someone that you're in love with, it's a much more important, much more intimate scenario. And yet I'm supposed to believe that like just random dude 27 turns up and you're like, and he's just like, look, I just can't. And you're like, well, look, I'm sorry, time's up. I'm really sorry. Oh, no, come on, man. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I don't think that's why you're crying.
I think sometimes like feeling so like robotic, like by I think like the 30th, you know, like when we're getting on a bit, I've got like a routine of like how we're going to do this. And like, it just, sometimes you'd like disassociate and be like, you know, like it's not like normal sex at all.
That's what a rape victim says. That's what victims of traumatic experiences say. That they disassociate from what's happening to them in order to mentally protect themselves. And that's where she's arrived at. And it's like, this is crazy. Like we are a culture that fosters a kind of competitiveness about women essentially abusing themselves for social media clout, for clicks, for money, for likes, for attention. And we have a thin, rational morality over the top of it that she's definitely trying to cling to and say, I just felt bad because they didn't get everything they wanted, you know, but I definitely consented to all of this, and I'm definitely glad that I did it. I'll definitely do it again. And again, this narrative could be fairly strong on either side of this, but here in the moment, when she's crying because she's doing a small amount of introspection over it, I don't know, man, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it.
In my head right now, I can think of like 5, 6 guys, 10 guys that I remember, and that's it. But it's just, I don't know, it's just weird, isn't it? Like, if I didn't have the videos, I wouldn't have known I've done 100, you know? But yeah. I think that was kind of the hard part, is like conversing with them, and like when they'd kind of be like, oh, like we've only had 2 minutes or 3 minutes and you said 5 on the message.
Did someone say that to you?
Yeah. And obviously it just makes me feel so bad.
Do you think you should feel bad about that?
I guess when you've promised something to people who support you, it's kind of hard to let them down.
But it's up to you, right?
I mean, sure. But is that really why you're emotionally broken after this? Like, I'm sad when I have to let people down who support. Whenever any of you guys, whenever I have to say, look, I can't do the rest of the super chat or something, you know. But I'm not breaking down off camera, right? As much as I love you guys and appreciate everything you do for me, you know, I'm not breaking down off camera because that is obviously not appropriate. That's not the right response to have to this. And again, just looking at her face, I just don't believe that's the thing that's bothering her. And anyway, let's carry on.
Like when you know.
Yeah.
Have you even processed, do you think, what's happened?
Not yet. God, I won't forget this day, Jesus.
When I decided to start making this documentary, I wasn't too sure of what to expect. I certainly didn't expect...
Look at the fact she's giving her a cuddle there. Like, she needs reassurance.
...to see Lily so upset at the end of it all.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, it's like... if this isn't a lesson to young women, I don't know what is. You know, and hopefully this is giving the correct lesson, which is don't do this. This is the sort of thing someone who essentially has no self-regard does, right? They have no self-regard. They only view other people's opinions of them as being valid. It's just it. But anyway, she afterwards, as Pearl here has pointed out, she put out a video after she, I guess, had composed herself, you know, a few days later or whatever, and it's just back to the rational narrative, right?
So on Saturday, I got run through by 101 guys. Now, I've had a lot of backlash so far about it, and I've seen some of the videos and I see your side. Like, I am not trying to encourage other girls to be doing that, like if they don't want to and feel like they have to do that. But my side is like, I'm just a girl trying to enjoy myself, trying to have fun, trying to make some content for you all, you know, trying trying to get my bag. Like, this is fun to me. This is what I enjoy. No one is forcing me to do this. And I feel like we're going back in time to where women are getting shamed for being a sluzzer.
Yeah, maybe that was a better time for women. Maybe there was a reason for that. But the point is, you can see now, again, she's back. She's recovered from the experience, right? It's like, oh, this is me having fun and making what I want, doing what I want. It's like, okay, but it also seems that what you're doing to yourself is in some way abusive. And now you are kind of, you're in denial. You've disassociated from it. And now you have to get back on the rational track of what you had been saying prior to this and then after this, because otherwise you would have to go back and go, no, okay, all of that was wrong. And all of those people who encouraged me, who carried it on, who supported me in doing it and were part of it, they're all pieces of shit. And I should have known better. And I allowed them to do this to me. Everyone involved. And so you have to be committed to, well, I'm a bit of a sunk cost fallacy here, in for a penny, in for a pound. I definitely did want this. I thought this was normal, or at least acceptable, and that's fine. And it's like, okay, that is mad. She then came out and obviously was looking for even more attention. And it's like, oh, I'm going to have sex with 1,000 men in a day. It's like, okay, well, I mean, just logistically, I don't think there are enough hours in the day for you to do that. So why is she saying it? You know, what she's doing, again, is looking for attention on social media. This is about getting attention on social media. And she is debasing herself in ways that hitherto unimagined in order to get that attention. It is crazy that this is totally normal. This is all acceptable. She is not getting deplatformed. I'm not saying she should get deplatformed, but like she's not getting, shut down. There's no one is trying to have some kind of intervention with her, even though everyone's like, oh my God, what the hell? And all she's doing is responding to the backlash. Like people in the comments are like, holy shit. But no one in her life is like, you've got to stop this. This is mental. You are literally going to ruin your life on the path that you're on. And she's like, I'm going to go even bigger. I'm going to get for 1,000. It's like, okay, that is... The people around her aren't treating her like they're someone they care about, right? They're not treating her as someone they love. Like, if this was just a friend of mine, I'd be like, what, no, you can't do that. I wouldn't be a good friend if I didn't try and stop you from doing this. You know what I mean? Like, let alone her parents, let alone, like, I mean, she probably doesn't have a man in her life, but like, just, this is not how the breaking of bonds and the weakening of bonds between human beings. This is the problem with it, right? Because someone should have intervened. Someone should have said, no, our relationship means I get to prevent you from doing this, right? That's what these bonds are for. When you're doing something that's so evidently self-destructive, when you appear to be choosing to abuse yourself in this way, our relationship means I get to pull rank on you now as your dad, as your mum, as your brother, as your sister, as your nanny, your granddad. We can see you're doing something harmful to yourself and it should stop. But anyway, Jennifer here is like, well, where are her parents? Again, who's Jennifer? Let's see. The founder of XXY or XY Athletics. So what I'm guessing is a turf, right? Where are her parents? How did they raise this poor girl to seek fame in the most self-harming of ways? Do not value herself and her body. I blame the parents. I do too. Do not value herself and her body. Though she is an adult making these decisions and hold responsibility as well, she's a very broken young woman, more broken now. Yeah, it looks that way. I agree. I completely agree. Of course, the men who participated and watched Fuel the Porn Industry overall deserve a ire. Yeah. Can't tell you how much I hate simps. Can't tell you. But the thing is, if I open the door to my house and say, hey, homeless vagrants, come and take things from my house as much as you want, and then 100 of them storm into my house and start taking things, it's kind of weird to then go, oh, you homeless vagrants, how could you come and take these things from my house? You'd be like, why are you allowing them to come and take everything from your house? You're the problem there. They're vagrants. I'm not going to put like, the moral onus on not stealing from the thief, right? They don't go, you thieves, you shouldn't steal. And the thieves go, don't worry, we'll watch ourselves and we won't steal. Yeah, no, obviously, why didn't you lock your door, right? you know that there are thieves in the world, you lock your door. You don't just open the door and invite them in and then get angry with the thieves when they've taken everything from you, obviously, right? So getting angry with the men for stealing her dignity like this, yeah, she literally canvassed for a bunch of scum, like literal gross lowlives who are happy to go through, and even then, you can see they're crossing moral thresholds of their own, where he's shaking his head going, Jesus Christ, my dad would kick me out. Yeah, no fucking shit. And with good reason. And what are you doing? Where's your dignity? But again, there's no point complaining about him because she is the gatekeeper behind all of this. She orchestrated it. This is her career. She's the one who suggested it. She's the one who organized it. And they couldn't have organized it for her. Like 100 men couldn't get together and go, right, we're gonna have this thing. Are you up for it? You know, a random woman. And the random woman were like, no, what the fuck are you talking about? Of course I'm not up for it. She had to be the impetus behind it. And so complaining about the men, yeah, sure, the men are disgusting, obviously, but they're not the ones who made this happen. She made this happen. Of course, any feminists who cheered on porn and sexual liberation, it's not. It's shackles of another variety. It's misogyny. It's treating women's bodies as commercial material to be abuse of money. Gross, sad, just awful, makes me sad. Yeah, I mean, I don't really disagree with that assessment at all. You know, she's put hardcore traditionalist and TERF are like, yeah, no, this is wrong. We shouldn't be doing this, right? Should not be doing this, obviously. She says and claims repeatedly that her parents are fine with this, but then she says, well, look, I don't exactly tell them about, like, my day. In here, she says, she made it clear that her mum and dad know about her job, but added, I'm not on the phone to them every day going, oh, you know, I just got DP'd and slept with 17 guys today. They don't need to know the logistics. So again, if all of this is completely fine, if it's just, oh, well, we all consented, it's, oh, well, then that's all totally fine. Why don't you want your parents to know the logistics of it? Why don't you want them to know? And the answer is because there is a non-liberal moral code that it would violate. It would be disgusting. There's something, again, animalistic about your moral senses that's non-rational, that is felt, that is habitual, and you would be violating that. And so you go, no, I just won't. And then so we return, we push that to the side, we return to the liberal morality. Did they consent to it? Did you consent to it? Well, then everything's fine, darling. Let's have some more gravy on our Sunday roast. No, mental. Right. And I watched this podcast, or this clip from the podcast that was a month ago, right? So before all of this came out. And let's watch a bit, because the guy on this, the woman on this is, oh yeah, no, you go girl, basically. But the guy on it is just losing his mind, actually. It's genuinely like heartening to watch. It's the men who have a problem with this.
Listen, what success is
my
for
version
her.
of successful.
So your version of successful is fucking 100 man in one day. You think that's successful?
Yeah.
That makes it.
Yeah.
So your mum thinks you're successful.
Yeah, they're very proud of me, and you know what? They are very supportive. So yeah.
How was your mum promiscuous?
I mean, I didn't really delve. I don't really
No,
want
but
to
you
delve
asked, you
into
might
my
have asked
mum.
her, innit?
Pardon?
I'm sure you might asked her, innit? No, it's important. Because you know why it's important, yeah? Because I'm thinking she's got a husband, so she's with someone.
Yeah, I think they enjoy sex. My parents, if that's what you want to know.
No. Obviously, I'm just thinking, come on, man. Like, I see her with you as well. Your mum cracks me up. But I'm saying she likes BBC. She's mental.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, she's fun like me. That's where I get it from.
She's cool. Why is she cool with this? Is that cool in Derby?
I think my parents.
Is this cool in Derby? Because in London, that's mad.
My parents.
You can feel him, right? You can feel him. Look at his face. He's just like he's sat next to a demon. Like he sat next to something unholy. And he's just trying to rationally understand, why does this exist in the world? How is it your mum could be okay with this? Was she a person like you? And I don't think her mum was, right? I'm guessing that she's saying, well, yeah, no, my mum's married for, as long as I can remember. I'm sure she didn't shag 100 men in a day, but for some reason she's all right. And you can feel the sort of desperation on him to be like, look, there has to be a reason that you're like this.
They both had house scares, and they see just such a bigger picture, just because their daughter's doing porn or sleeping with guys and stuff like that. They think
100 man in one day.
She's enjoying herself, and the world's still revolving.
100 man in one day.
The thing is, you can.
And your dad ain't even hung himself.
I love it. I love this guy. 100 men in one day and your dad ain't even hung himself. Yeah, that's like, can I tell you what, man? If that was one of my daughters, I would physically intervene. I would be like, no, that's not happening. That's not fucking happening. Of course it's not happening. Right? And you feel this guy is just like, Jesus, you know?
Rags. 100 man in one day.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm
101.
saying? Rag.
And she's just not ashamed of this at all.
Because that, look, 101, she's even going mad. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, you nearly cried. She nearly cried a minute ago. No, because you're still, you're a babby.
Yeah.
Like, and it's weird for me because it's like...
Anyway, we'll leave him there. But yeah, so the question is, okay, well, where are the parents? What do the parents think of this? And let's just have a quick search. Oh, her mum is her head of finance. Oh. So her mum is being paid out of this. Right. Okay, that's weird, right? That's really, really weird, you would think. Like, essentially, her mum is her pimp. Jesus. And again, like you said, and your dad hadn't even hanged himself. Like, right. So, what to make of that, right? Yeah, chat. I'm. The mum is the pimp, the head of finance. It's like, okay. Evil witch of a mother, man. Like, but this is why it's on. Like again, this I don't know who this guy is. I this only came up in Google search, but I bet his daughter are going to do something like this. Like he'd intervene. She bloody well should intervene. This is I don't want to sound like a religious zealot, but yeah, man, I'm starting to think they had some arguments, right? Look, she earns 6 figures a month and employs 8 staff, all women, right? One of them being her mum, obviously. So she's making 600k a month, apparently. And again, she needs an extra 100k for some reason. And her mum is clearly making loads of money out of this. And so it's like, right, my daughter's dignity, her future, I don't care about any of that. She's making loads of money and she consents to it. Don't worry about it. It's totally fine. And it's just... And again, she's doing it just to be a standout person on OnlyFans. It is... I mean, I'm definitely pro-patriarchy at this point, right? I'm definitely just, I think... Like, I'm with this guy. This guy, we stop this, right? And again, lots of people point out, look at her face, man. Look at her face. Like, this is what her own mother has allowed to happen and done to her. Like, and I'm sure that there are times where she enjoys this. I'm sure in the moment she might, enjoy it. But come on, man. Come on. There's something more that's going on. Anyway, you get ridiculous people. I don't know who this is. A sex and relationships consultant. Never take these people seriously because they're evil. Unpopular opinion in Puritan America. Ah, yes. The only people who would object to this would be Puritans. That's right. Get on your Puritan skull caps because we're objecting to women having sex with 100 men in a day. The only reason that Lily Phillips doesn't seem very happy after 100 men train is not that it couldn't have been fun and enjoyable, it's that she didn't do it for the right reasons, i.e. her own fun and pleasure. Well, that's not true. She literally came out and said, oh no, I do this because it's what I find fun. She literally said it. Like, sorry.
I'm not trying to encourage other girls
she says she enjoys
be doing that. Like, if their side is like, I'm just a girl, trying to enjoy myself, trying to have fun, trying to...
This is fun to her, apparently, allegedly, we are told. So, like, saying, well, she did it for the wrong reasons, not according to her, if she is a credible source on that, which is doubtful. And then we get to the sort of, again, the radfem position on this, which is in some ways good and in some ways caricature, like a genuine caricature of what human morality is. You've got Julie Bendel here saying, shame on the men exploiting Lily Phillips. Well, yeah. But I think there are people more close to Lily who deserve the shame, such as her own mother Why isn't that coming up, Julie? She herself deserves some bloody shame, doesn't she? Like, mental. She says, I've interviewed women who have been required to have sex with 8, 10, 12 men every day because they're under the control of a pimp in a brothel, all being victimized by a grooming gang, for example. And she points out, like, you know, they disassociate in the same way Lily did. But what of the men who wish to join in on such competition? Yeah, they're disgusting, Julie. They're disgusting. But why hold open the door? The person holding open the door for the gross people that you have signalled to bring in, okay, yeah, we literally carved out a constituency saying, dear gross people, come here and be gross. And it's like, oh my God, look at all these terrible gross people. Yeah, of course. Why advertise for the gross people in the first place, right? But again, she does make raise some good questions. Why would they want to have sex with a woman after so many others? It's a great question. I don't know. Like, it's disgusting. I wouldn't do it. I have no idea why. She effectively disassociated herself during the challenge. And yeah, again, it makes her sound like an abuse victim. Completely true. Why are we focusing on the men, though? Because again, she consented, according to her. Oh no, I agreed with all of this. Blah, blah, blah. She organized it. She's the one who made this happen. Like, at any point, she could have been like, yeah, okay, I'm not going to do it. This was kind of crazy. But she didn't. So, complaining about the men, yeah, I mean, yeah, they're gross. There are gross men in the internet, in the world, yeah. But anyway, she then calls for OnlyFans to be shut down. Of course. And then you get other rad femme types, like Sinead here, is like, the discourse around the woman who slept with 100 men in 100 days is really pissing me off. The girl is so clearly traumatized she's getting all the shade, not the 100 men who lined up to use her. Honestly, fuck men. It's right, yeah, it's just all men. It's just men now. And I was just like, well, look, you know, the question is one of gatekeeping and being gatekept. Are men the gatekeepers of sex? And she was like, well, you know, don't you think that they should have used restraint? And it's like, if someone is a bad person, there is a level on which you do expect them to change their behavior. However, you don't say to the drug addict, well, listen, you're a bad person for taking those drugs. I'm going to leave these drugs here and you better not take them or I'm going to wag my finger at you. And then there's the sensible, real world, practical solution where you just go, yeah, I'm just not going to leave the drugs with the drug addict. I'm just going to be real about this. He's going to take those drugs. I don't want him having the drugs. Therefore, I'm not going to leave the drugs with the drug addict. I have a moral duty to intervene and make sure the drug addict doesn't just have easy access to drugs. And so if you're like advertising for a bunch of guys who are just weird sexually in their minds and being like, yeah, well, yeah, okay, you can complain about them all they want, but really she shouldn't have been doing this is what you're saying. And so like pointing at the men going, oh no, it's all men's fault. No, it's her fault as well as her mother's and the culture in general. But again, this is not something you can just point at the men and go, well, look, what a woman should have done is said, I want 100 men to come and have sex with me, and to expect 0 men to turn up. Like, no, there are scum men out there. Don't give them the opportunity. Don't allow them to license to do this. You know, that's the issue. Like, we'll carry on, in fact. Then you got Radfem Hitler, who I actually quite like. But she says this: men fundamentally don't believe they have control over their own actions. Women and women alone decide how virtuous men will be. It's like, okay. The problem that you've arrived at here, Miss Hitler, and she carries on with this, men be like, women avoid accountability, and it's just women refuse to take responsibility for men's own actions. Again, the problem that you have here is that the woman is responsible for the decision she made. This would not have been possible were she not to organise it. Yes, the men involved are gross, but when you're saying to us, okay, well, look, it should have been prevented that men would be able to sign up when a woman puts out a call saying, I want 100 guys to have sex with me in a day. It should have been prevented by men because that would be accountability for men taking responsibility for their own actions. Okay, then fair enough. How is that done? Well, that is done through the Nick Fuentes method. That is done by saying, no, your body is my choice. You don't get to canvass for 100 men in a day because we can't guarantee that every man on earth will say no to that. It is a practical impossibility, but what is practically possible is to make sure women can't just be public whores and become millionaires out of it. That's possible. It was possible all through human history right up until this point. And so you are validating Nick Fuentes and saying, no, your body, my choice, because otherwise you'll say we're not taking accountability for the actions. Otherwise you will complain that it's the men that are the problem. It's like, yep, fair enough. I agree the men are the problem. You're not going to be able to be a prostitute anymore. That's what's going to happen. Or Lily takes accountability for what she's chosen to do. The people around her take accountability for fomenting a milieu in which she thought that was acceptable. The wider culture grapples with what it means to empower the worst instincts in young women and give them the platform, the access to millions and millions of men, many of whom will be total scum, to allow them to do all of this. It either is women come down and say, no, this is just an unacceptable thing and we have to have some sort of social regulation, or it's going to end up being this all the time. And if that essentially means your body, my choice, well, then that's what it fucking means, isn't it? There's literally no other way about this, by the way. You know, the irony of, I mean, this got 100 million views. It's really pissed everyone off. But look at what the rad femmes are really asking for. It's like, well, if you can't make every single man on earth virtuous, then the problem is with men. It's like, okay, well, then we're going to have to stop that from happening. I agree. It's going to have to be women don't get to do this. That's what it's going to have to be. Right? So anyway, I thought the a good take from this came from Catgirl Kulak, who said, look, these really embody Gen Z for me. An entire generation well beyond breaking point, even at the most attractive, urban, and wealthy. Yeah. This is a generation that is losing it, frankly, and has not been well prepared to deal with the world. Like, what young people really need is genuinely a kind of guide, like a course in school, where it's like, look, this is how you ought to be, this is what you're trying to get to, and this is what the end result you should expect it. These are the standards you should expect people to treat you to, and this is a guarantee of a happy life. You don't have to follow it, but it will make your life generally pretty good. By the end of your life, you'll be like, yeah, 7 out of 10. I'm happy with that. That was a good life. It won't be a fucking ruined life like you've got now. Like, unironically, like how to be a proper person, a proper functioning person, seems to be a course that you actually need to teach these people at this point. But anyway, I'll leave it there and let's talk about some of your comments, because there have been many of them, unsurprisingly. It's just, this whole thing is just terrible. Absolutely terrible. I hate it. I hate the responses to it. It's just awful. Anyway. Again, I didn't want to talk about this. Like, I left this ages before I started talking about this. Because this is just, it's just so bad. Like, and the fact that everyone involved is just like, well, you know, they were consented. No, the rad femmes don't agree. The trad dads don't agree. You know, like, the only people who seem to agree are her mum, who's making money out of it. Right? And the disgusting, even the disgusting scum who go and have sex with her don't agree. Like, they don't want, like, they're shaking, they're nervous, they don't want to be on camera, they don't agree. They're just doing it for whatever sexual kick they're getting out of it. But they don't agree. No one agrees that this is good. And so actually we could be like, yeah, no, that actually could be prevented, right? There could be is this a legitimate use of the moral use of the state to prevent women from doing this? Maybe. It seems that the rad femmes are kind of on board with it. Anyway. I want a psychiatrist to watch the documentary. Yeah, I mean, God only knows. I want a psychiatrist to sit down and talk to her about it. Matt says, the woman must really hate herself. This truly is self-harm. The burden of shame she would impose on anyone that might have loved her will make it impossible for her ever to be a wife and mother. Imagine her dad going down to the pub. Like, imagine just, because I mean, like, okay, let's assume that she's fine with it. And her dad's like, okay, well, I'll tolerate it. Other people's opinion of her father craters from this. Like, I have a terribly low opinion of her father. Like, I think her father's fucking scum. He must be the most pathetically weak and immoral man conceivable. Like, he whatever he thinks his relationship with his daughter is, it's not one of a loving father. Because a loving father ought to guide his daughter to the right path in life and away from this. To say, oh, my dad supports me. I mean, I've not seen a statement from her father, so she might be lying. I don't know. But my God, man. Solar Wind says, OnlyFans democratise women's ability to make money by virtue of existing. Well, will men get the same sort of democratisation? Well, that's what your labour is. Get a job. I'm afraid. But, I mean, this isn't just existing either. She is doing something terrible through this. So, Matthew says, as a Catholic, in my opinion, everyone needs a path to redemption. I have no idea what hers would look like for her. I hope she finds some peace eventually. Yeah, I mean, imagine in 20 years' time. Like, when she's... I mean, what kind of man is going to want her? Oh, I'm going to marry the woman who slept with 100 guys in a day. Are you? Thank you for the donation, Jacob. Much appreciated. Aunt Trez says, let me radicalize you for Beauvais. Well, we covered it on the podcast today, so I don't want to get off topic, but I'm already radicalized on it. Nicholas says, aspiring to be the greatest creator is like aspiring to cause the greatest amount of human suffering. Yes, it's a record, but an infamous one. Kind of, yeah. I mean, I suppose it depends what you do. Like, if you're someone like PewDiePie, who's like, you know, I'm going to do wholesome things, okay, that's fine. You know, if you're doing wholesome things that are good for people, if they were to imitate you and to imbibe your content as well, they don't even have to imitate you. You know, if it's like, you know, PewDiePie, like, oh, I got really buff, I had a kid, I go rock climbing or whatever. Like, okay, great, this is good. This is a great example for people. This woman, like, holy shit, man. Like, I'm starting to think, mate, yeah, I'm not, like, again, I'm not a giant, like, Puritan or anything. All I'm saying is when they take over, I'm going to be like, well, I would prefer this than the alternative, you know? Broman says, shit like this would get you banished in South African Bantu cultures. Frankly, the Afrikaners would banish you too. In any pre-modern era, anywhere, like 50 years ago, this would get you banished. Like, but once you desaturate the culture of the traditional sort of fluffy, thick morality that imbues itself in everything, and you just have the social contract. Oh, I signed a contract. Then everything's on the fucking table, and it's terrible, man. Pirate Skeleton says, I'd rather give money to you than her. Well, thank you so much, because I'd rather that too. Her stunt is the inevitable escalation we see in social media, like streamers committing crimes. Yeah, it genuinely is a problem. Like, there is, every now and again, you'll see like, you know, streamer fell off of a cliff or off the top of a building or something like that because they were trying to get clicks and views by doing something extreme and edgy. And it's like, I don't really have that much sympathy, to be honest. Idiot. You know, this is essentially a Darwinian event. Jim says, I think we crossed the threshold when we decided prostitution and pornography were victimless crimes. Now just quibbling on degrees. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not like a giant Puritan. I think you're always going to have a certain degree of these things. Again, the oldest profession in the world is obviously not going away, but it should not be allowed to be center stage in the culture like this, right? It should be something gross that gross people go and do behind closed doors and you know, shameful. And if that was the case, I wouldn't even care about this, but we're just not there, man. The Last Russian says, unchecked women's rights and their consequences have been a disaster for the human race. Yeah, putting no expectations on women for decorum and for personal behavior has become a real issue. Like, Gen Z women are the ones suffering from it. Because, like, their mums and, well, maybe who knows about her mum, but most women, I can't think of a woman who acted this way when I was growing up. Like, you never heard of anything like this. This was crazy. Like, yeah, the mum's the head of finance as per the Daily Mail. Yeah, exactly. So essentially, a mum is a pimp. Mental. Ori says, this isn't prostitution. Prostitution is carried out of fiscal need. This is pure debauchery, hedonistic, destructive, unadulterated degeneracy for the sake of pseudo-fun attention. Well, I don't know if it's necessarily out of fiscal need, right? Because I remember seeing, like, some video of, I think it was a guy in Poland or Russia or something, who's, you know, driving around with his phone out, drives to a curb crawling to a prostitute and says, oh, hey, how much for an hour? And she's like, however much. I don't know how much it was. I can't remember how much it was. But he's like, great, because I needed my kitchen cleaned. So I'll pay you, you know, for an hour or whatever. And she's like, no. He's like, see, it's just, you want to have sex. So I think there are women who do it because they enjoy sex, right? I think there are women who do that. I think that's a fair example. But it's also hedonistic, destructive, and unadulterated degeneracy. And again, I don't want to come off like a massive prude. I'm not a massive prude. It's just there have to be limits. There has to be a space for traditional morality. And again, this is what everyone's admitting, that everyone in this way has this kind of traditional morality. And they're like, yeah, no, this is gross and it's gone way too far. And, you know, everyone's kind of watching you as a carnival sideshow freak. Like at this point, the guy doing the documentary. And we have to be able to essentially claim that and say, well, look, there have to be this is what puts boundaries on what we're allowed to consent to, right? That's what puts boundaries on it. Thank you for the donation, Badger Toes. Dylan says, prostitution isn't the oldest, it's the dumb lie. The oldest would be hunter, gatherer, or farmer. Well, look, okay. The point being, ever since we've had civilization, prostitution has existed. That's what it's you know, a tenor phrase. SolarWind says, in the future, women will do this every day for 8 hours straight and it won't even be a livable wage. Entirely possible. Ori says, Jess Phillips has no dignity, Carl. Well, I'm not saying she does, but that's what everyone was angry at me for attacking. And it's not really about her. It's about the kind of metaphysical status of women or ontological status of women in society that everyone was angry at me for. Pirate Skeleton says, I do what I want because I enjoy this. This is a short-term thinking of modernity that will destroy us all. Yeah, no, I agree. And, like, again, let's assume that for now she does. Do you enjoy it in 5 years' time? Do you enjoy it in 10 years' time? Do you enjoy it when literally everyone who you ever meet looks at you with a kind of sadness and pity in their eyes? When you're 50, you've lost your looks, no one wants to touch you, and you have nothing else. Like, do you... And again, everyone looks at you with a mixture of, like, pity and disgust. Like, is that... Again, were you thinking of that? No. The girl is lying. Sage says the girl is lying for PR. She thoroughly enjoyed being paid to do this shit. A satanic kind of enjoyment, nonetheless. But she wouldn't 10 times the ante if she hated it as much as she did. Well, that's the thing. I don't know. I think there's two narratives in her head, or two senses in her head. The one is the sort of rational liberal side, and then the other is the human side that's like, oh my God, what are you doing to me? I'm going to make you cry now. I'm going to make you disassociate to get through this. Dan says, I think Heinlein is correct. Nothing freely given has no value. I think so too. Rights should not exist without corresponding responsibilities and duties. Agreed. You know, when they created the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen in France, they wanted the sort of more traditional minded people wanted a corresponding declaration of the duties as well, because they understood that the rights without the duties would actually be a problem. And of course, the French Revolution went brilliantly for everyone involved, and those people were wrong. I'm of course joking. The French Revolution was terrible. Lee5 says female hierarchies are flat. You get more variance in status in male hierarchies. Women improve status in the same way that men, ladies and pimps too. The end result is broken women chasing easy status. I don't think the women's hierarchy is flat. It's just different. It's different to men's. Men's hierarchy is based on something else. Scarfy says we've created the whore of Babylon. It's like, yeah, we kind of have actually. You know, and again, I'm not trying to condemn her. I feel sorry for her. I feel sorry that this is the thing that she is able to become a notable person about. That's terrible. That's genuinely terrible. But again, what are you going to do? Russian again says, the level of civilization is the level of its womanhood. The history of civilization could be written in terms of the level of its women, from Fulton Sheen. Quite possibly, and she's right that, we're going backwards, everyone's shaming me. Oh God, if only. Like, you know, if only we can start going backwards just a bit. iGen says, she probably thinks she went through some spiritual experience, transcending the norms of her time and challenging the sexist male-ruled world. No, I don't think that was it. I don't think that was how she was feeling about it. I just think that she's never been in touch with the normal morality that I think is inside of her, because it's inside of all of us, it seems. And she's in a culture where this is permissive and gives her validation and attention. And she makes loads of money out of it. Like, there are lots of rational reasons to say, well, no, this is all totally fine. Look how successful I'm being. This is all permitted. And if it's permitted and encouraged and rewarded in such a way, then surely this must be right. Convincing Reality says modern society actively proselytizes to women that relationships have always been exploitative, that financial success is the highest form of self-actualization, and this is the quickest path to achieving it. Yes, that's exactly right. It's exactly right. And I guess her mother is encouraging this. I guess her mother is part of this problem. And Matthew says it's her immortal soul that wants to be heard. So yeah, it kind of looks that way. Genuinely kind of looks that way, doesn't it? Like, I mean, what am I supposed to believe if not that? You know what I mean? Like, this is clearly terrible for her. This is clearly terrible. No, I mean, and if the rad femmes are like, oh, this is not sex positive, this is abuse, those men are evil, it's like, yeah, let's agree. But let's also get a grip on what brought her to this place, right? Because these men didn't just find her, grab her, drag her into an alley and do terrible things to her. She invited them in. And so if we agree that they're doing terrible things, well, then something terrible has been done to her to get to this point. And the position, the mindset that she has itself must be terrible. George says, keys and broken locks come to mind. She has now transcended that and is on track to become a tunnel. Yeah, well, I mean, this is mad. The Engaged View says she's getting closer and closer to genuine moral peril. No wonder she cried. When she said it out loud, it was real and undeniable. Yeah. Yeah. Again, the fact that she cried afterwards, it's like, look, you can give me the spiel, the rationalization, all you want. But if you genuinely feel that something is good and it's genuinely wholesome, you smile at the end of it. You're happy. You are in the warm bath of endorphins or whatever it is, and you are happy at the end of it. You don't cry. Like, sorry, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. The Engaged View, oh, sorry, I read that one. Thanks, Philip. Freedom from what? Well, social expectation and obligation. That's the thing. The moral bonds that hold society together. That's what she's getting freedom from. And actually, was that good? Are we not at a point now where we can say, this has gone too far? JS says, what if this is meant to be a promo for the upcoming release of The Emperor's Children? Bravo Games Workshop. Well, this was a hell of a 4D chess. Hell of a what is the alternate reality or active reality thing? No, I'm joking. Obviously, it's not. Brett Murphy says, please pray for this young woman. I've reached out to her with the gospel, inviting her to turn to Jesus for healing and forgiveness. She won't even know what you're doing. She won't even understand it. She's grown up in a secular culture, right? And this is why I'm an atheist. I grew up in a secular culture. But at least for me, at least enough of the traditional morality still existed for me to at least have a connection to the past. But she's 23, man. She was born in 2001, 4 years into the Blair era in this country. The moral content of society was being drained out, desaturated at that point. And now her world is very much grayscale when it comes to morality. Did they consent to it? Did they not? Well, if they consented to it, then it's white. If they didn't consent to it, then it's black. And that's literally all moral calculus for these people. That's literally it. We're living through an evil much worse than Noah's generation could ever fathom. Trying to think of a way to say that's not correct. Convincing Reality says accountability means bearing the weight of your own sins. These actions are born out of deliberate rejection of reality. I can't feel sorry for her. Yeah, but the thing is, again, I like on one level you are right, obviously, but on another level, I remember I've lived through, and I keep saying the desaturation of the moral content of the culture for a reason, because I really think this is the issue. And it's difficult to grab, right? It's difficult. I can't pin something down precisely. But there is a level of dignity that existed in the 90s, right? Where we had pride, self-respect, confidence. There's a kind of awe of glory. And this is what something like Red Dwarf was appealing to, actually. And you see throughout the telos of Lister in Red Dwarf is that he becomes a better man throughout it, right? he starts as this fucking loser who'd have probably gone on to do something like this. But even then, he wouldn't have done. And like, you know, he's in that kind of post-moral liberal order, but he's the last man, and he becomes a moral man towards the end of it. Like, it's a very strange thing that we see, man. The 90s wasn't hell enough. It was still there, right? All of the things were still there. It was just becoming what it became in the 2000s. I lived through all of this. I remember it, right? It was becoming, but it wasn't there. And the morality was still that, you know, in place. And now it's not there. The morality is not still in place. It's been drained out of the culture. And so now all we have are contractual obligations and rules. And that's just not good enough. That produces this. Engage View says, see what happens to girls who never see their father take off his belt. Sorry, but it's true. Well, we don't know the state of the father, right? We don't know what he's like. Beginning with a very fucking low opinion of him. And the mother's directly involved. The mother's completely complicit. So it's just, okay, fair enough. Eyes That Watch says, great analysis, Carl. This is grim, but shame on you for showing up young Harry. You have to be leader, sir. Well, again, like, Harry, you know, he's entitled to his opinion and he's entitled to his analysis. And I actually haven't seen Harry's analysis of it yet because I've just been really busy. And I've had more time to gather more things, right? Things have passed. Other things have surfaced that I've been able to look into. Like, Stelios wants to talk about this on the podcast tomorrow, so definitely go tune in for that. Stelios is going to have, again, another unique take on this. And it's going to be tough to beat, probably, Stelios's. Because, I mean, he's brilliant at what he does. Russian says, the dissociation is a 10,000 BC plus rape cope mechanism. Evo psych. Women could survive and be raped and pass on the genes or resist and be killed. Yeah, there's no doubt. No doubt. AC says, I have no sympathy for her or anyone like her. If she's a victim, she's a victim of her own evil delusions. Another sacrifice for the false god that is female empowerment. All gods ask for is blood and sacrifice. Yeah, no, that's true. But like I said, I saw the culture changing. And at the time, you could feel the moral content draining out of the civilization, but it wasn't, unless you were looking for it, you didn't know why the thing was changing. And then by like the end of the 2010s, you've got things like the In-Betweeners, where everything is about being debauched, right? The entire culture is about being debauched and being a sarcastic, cynical loser who's never getting anywhere and who's not got any dignity and will never have dignity. And people will try and strip you of your dignity to lower you down to this lowest common denominator. And that's why Lister from Red Dwarf is different, actually. Like, if you look at the relationship between Lister and Rimmer, Rimmer is a pretender. He wants to be a part of the high-class, dignified culture, but he's not. Lister doesn't want to be a part of that, and he is forced to attain it. And, you know, because he's the last man alive. And so you see this sort of the culture grappling with it at the time, and then 20 years after that, we've got just the In-Betweeners where they're just gross and weird losers. And I was watching the guy who plays, I can't remember the name of him, but the guy who's the sarky, insecure loser on it has got a podcast with his wife. And I was watching it today, and I found it kind of fascinating because he calls his wife mate, and they just rag on each other for an hour. And like, there are genuine things where she'll like on this thing. Like, he basically says, well, he spends his entire Sunday in bed, and that's it, he doesn't care. And they've got kids. And so she's spending her entire Sunday doing laundry and, you know, cleaning up. And she's like, well, look, you could at least make me a cup of tea. And he's like, well, what would that do? And it's like, what do you mean, what would that do? She's doing loads of stuff. A cup of tea would be nice from you. And he's just being, like, really self-centered about it. And it's that kind of undignified, ignoble man that I'm talking about, where and he's like, okay, well, look, if you want me to make you a cup of tea, make you a cup of tea. And the thing is, I've been there, right? I was that guy 10, 15 years ago. Like, I've been there because that was the culture. It was like, well, we're all essentially independent, atomized people. We don't really have any obligations to one another. But, you know, and she's like, look, it's not about me having to ask you to do something. It's about you showing me that you're thinking of me and that you care by doing something for me. And honestly, she's right. Right? She's right. And my wife's probably like, fucking. And the thing is, I do this on Saturday mornings. I'll get up early so my wife can have a lie-in. Me and the kids will tidy the living room, the downstairs, and the kitchen. So when my wife gets up, the house isn't a fucking shithole. Right? And that makes her happy. And the thing is, she didn't have to ask me to do it. I do it because I love her and because I know it's going to make her day better. Her day just begins in a much better way. And it's not a huge effort from me. And I was watching what's his name? Jamie or something? I can't remember the kid from the In-Betweeners. Jay. Yeah, right. Yeah, Jay. And everyone knew a guy like this. I was probably a lot like that when I was when I was a teenager. But I don't think I was ever that bad. But the fact that he couldn't see why she was asking him to think about her and consider her. You could see that she was annoyed by it, and I'm justly so. And I've had these conversations with girlfriends and whatnot throughout the time. But the defaulting back to, well, you can just ask me, is essentially defaulting back to the consent-based morality. It's like, you make a request, I consent to the request, then you get what you want. But she's not asking for that. She's asking for you to live within the thick, oppressive morality of traditionalism, where it's just, no, you have a bond with her, and so she should be on your mind when you're making your decisions. And if you can see she's working, you should literally, it should be your heart connected to hers, and you should be like, no, I'm going to go and make her the cup of tea because I can see that she'd really like a cup of tea. You can go make yourself one. It doesn't have to just be, I'm just going to be a servant or something. But like that's what she's asking for, and there's something more than just the contractual. Ask me, and I'll consent. I'll write my name on the contract and make you the cup of tea. It's again, I'm probably not describing this brilliantly. It's been a long day. Did the podcast earlier, recorded a couple of little videos, so I'm tired. I'm currently as well I'm trying to do fasting. So basically, I'm going as long as I can without eating. I haven't eaten anything since about 9 o'clock last night, and it's now nearly 11 o'clock. I'm feeling pretty good, but I am going to go and do a steak in a minute. Basically, I'm trying to keep my calorie intake down to about 500 calories. I had yesterday I ate, but I waited 24 hours or more than actually, probably about 30 hours, 28 hours before I'd eaten. And then I had 4 pepperonis. So that's 400 calories of protein. I've had nothing since. I'm going to have a steak that I'm going to fry in beef tallow actually, because I arrived today after this, and I'm really looking forward to it. So if I'm flagging somewhat, bear with me. But I'm actually feeling pretty good. I'm not feeling desperately hungry, but I bet as soon as I smell the food, I'm going to feel very fucking hungry. But anyway, I'm because Furious Dan, I'm sick of being fat. And, I realize I'm not fat like I was, but I'm still not super toned. And Andy No posted a picture of himself on fucking Twitter the other day. I was like, shit, he looks fucking absolutely shredded. I need to get like that. And my wife's like, you don't need to get like that. I was like, yeah, I know, it's vanity, darling. It's pure vanity. I need to start an OnlyFans. I need to shag 100 men in a day, darling. Look how much money she's making. Got to pay for the kids' school. Anyway. Brian says therapists have never had stronger job security than now. Totally true. There's not going to be any lack of therapy in the future, is there? You thought mortician was the most secure job. No, not anymore. Deadpool Kid says, here's a sad truth. Nobody remembers the 101 or even 200 faces of men she slept with. People are only going to remember seeing her as the only female in the gathering. She signed her life away. Pirate Skeleton says, she didn't remember that handful of men because she disappointed them. She remembered them because they looked at her in disgust when doing the act. Possibly. Ave Lucifer says she's clearly mentally unwell. Thank you, you know who I am. Steel Kicker says, it's a problem with society. She has an issue and those men should be helping her. But what do the men in our society do? Get in a big line. It begins at home, right? Her parents should be fucking preventing this. It's mental. Convincing Reality says, she refers to herself as a girl. She's an adult woman and therefore accountable. Re-establishing her performative persona does nothing to separate her from those actions. This will haunt her forever. That's a great way of framing it. That's what I was looking for, the performative persona. She's got the rational narrative that she's persuaded, no, I consent, therefore this is acceptable, therefore I can make loads of money doing this, and therefore all of this is the performative persona. But in the moment when that drops, and the guy's like, well, how do you feel? And she starts crying. That's not the performative persona. You know who I am says, as a father of a young girl, I'm obviously worried that this is the culture that's going to do to her. What can we do? I think the most important thing is make sure your kids feel that you are morally obliged to them in ways they can't ask for and can't refuse. Right? I explain this to my son all the time. Thankfully, my stepdaughter, she's 15, and but I've been in her life since she's like 2, and she's turned out really well. She's really, really level-headed. She's very right-wing, which is good, and I'm not worried about her at all because she's got her head screwed on. But I think it's because me and her mother have been just a really good example to her. But I say this to my 9-year-old all the time, that I make you do things and I punish you when you do things wrong. I make you do things you don't enjoy, like reading Winston Churchill, playing the piano, getting up on time, making sure you go to school. Not because these things are easy for me, right? It would be way easier for me. He doesn't have a phone. He does have a tablet, but it's for school, and a load of things are on it are locked. Basically, he's got like maths games he can do, but like he can't just sit on there doing whatever the hell he wants all day. And I don't let him sit on it, and I only let him play computer games at the weekend when he's done everything that I want him to do. And even then he's doing it with me. But the point is, like, I make him, do all these things because I love him. I don't do it because it would be easier for me. It'd be way easier for me to say, here's a tablet, son. Sit there quietly for a couple of hours before you go to bed, right? So I can do whatever the fuck I like. No, I'm out there with a pair of boxing gloves, and he's slapping the boxing gloves, and he's got a good strong hit as well, for like 20 minutes every day, or almost every day. I sit there with him for half an hour while he does his piano, while he's reading Winston Churchill, while he's doing something practical and constructive that is a skill that he's learning. And I must spend hours and hours every week doing this with him. And then on Saturday morning, I take him to a bloody boxing club. So, no matter what the weather, we ride our bikes down there, and I sit there for an hour while and it's just like, it would be way easier for me to not do this. And then if he does something wrong, I've got to punish him. And so I'm like, no, I've got to sit him down, explain what he's done wrong, and then make sure that he is punished and stick to the fucking punishment. So I have to enforce the punishment. All of this is time, effort, and stress. And every time I have to explain to him, whenever he's like, I don't want to do my boxing, I was like, no, you have to. And you'll understand why you had to when you leave home. Like, you'll understand when you have children of your own, the amount of time and energy I'm spending is because I love you and I want you to succeed in life. I want you to have things that I didn't have, that my dad didn't have the opportunity to give me. And I want to make sure that you have more than I had, because this is what fathers do. And so it's like, that's what you can do, right? Make them understand that there is a morality that's not about choosing, because he wouldn't choose this. He wouldn't choose to play the piano or, read Winston Churchill, but I make him do it, and he will understand when he's older why I did this. And even now, I think he's starting to understand why. That it's, I'm intervening as his father, as someone who loves him more than anything in the world. And I don't want to lose my composure. So anyway, that's what you have to do. Deadpool Kid says, this is the toxicity of fame. No one want her. No one want to associate with her. And sadly, some of her family may even resent and despise her. I don't know. I'm only speculating. Well, I mean, her mum's a pimp, so it's kind of crazy. Chicken Joe says, it's in her life she's decided to get screwed. Now she can only get screwed in a variety of different ways. Yep. 15 hours to do 100, 150 hours to do 1,000. Well, I mean, obviously she can't do 1,000, practically speaking. AC says, no one's proud of her. She just has permissive parents that don't care about her. It might be worse. It might be worse than that. It might be that her mum is literally making bank off of her. Like, what if her mum's making like 100 grand a month or something off her? Her dad's friend asked me in the next video. Fuck. The moral content of our lives exists in our relationships. You can't be moral on your own, right? If you're dropped on a desert island, morality is just not something you can do, because morality is something you do with other people, Morality is a social tool that we use in order to exist in a society with one another. And so the morality must be contained in the metaphysical connection we have with other people, right? It must be in there. And so and this is why the question about cousin marriage has been gross in this country. It's like, well, you know, we're going to have cousin marriage and you'll just have to genetically screen us. And it's like, how about it's immoral to marry and have sex with a close relation? How about that? You know, have we even discussed it? No, you're not even going to discuss it. You're not like us, okay? You're not like us. Cameron says pornography must be banned. I don't think it's going to be. You know, I think even if it's not banned, it should definitely be relegated to the fringes where it used to be. The N-Rib says, Dave the Distributor said he would debate 100 leftists in one day. That's funny, but hardly the same problem. Meatwad says, the dumbest NPCs online are those who virtue signal about COVIDs. Well, yeah, but who's talking about that? And Necromance says, even swingers don't act like that. This girl is just sad. I mean, I don't know, but it is just, it's just mental, isn't it? It's mental that this is where we are. It's just... sorry, I just need to refresh this. She's lying. This is a stunt meant to normalize and promote promiscuity, degeneracy, and sex work. Well, I don't know if she's lying about that. I mean, she's open about that, right? She was like, yeah, I felt like a prostitute. It's like, well, that's because you literally are. I mean, don't say. The Engaged Few says that's a bedroom that could use some incense burning. Yes. Super speed dating. Yeah, they have sex on the first date. Gross. Russian says, when Martin Bormann was tasked with depopulating Ukraine and Poland on the orders of Hitler, he flooded both countries with the most graphic porn. Irene says, this is why we raise our daughters Catholic. Oh, hell yeah. Dineska says, just a nobody from Guadeloupe, a French overseas department in the Caribbean, who wants to say thank you for everything you do, even though I'm not British. Well, thank you. And you don't have to be British to hopefully appreciate what I'm saying. I don't think what I'm saying is necessarily only important to British people or anything. I think there probably are some timeless moral truths that we stumble upon here, aren't there? Like, don't have sex with 100 men in a day. Steel Manning says, what are the odds she comes back and sues the men if you... I don't think she's going to do that. I doubt she'll have the contact to do it. Like, you know, how would she deliver court documents to these men? She probably doesn't even know their names. Although she did see their IDs, actually. Maybe, I don't know. But I doubt she'll do that. I don't think that's the arc that we're on. Greyman Media says, Sargon, I don't feel for her because she got the corn-style experience that she wanted. This cuts deeper than what she learned. We're talking 50 years of ads, movies, TVs, teaching us warped values. There's definitely something to that. And I think but it's in the last 20 or so, 25 years, where I've really felt the sort of crystallizing of the moral culture. I don't know how to, but it's like a photograph that's faded in the sun. You know, we're not rich and vibrant with morality like we used to be. In the interview with the guy who couldn't understand, you can tell she was trying to justify it and make it okay in her mind. It's very sad. Yeah. Again, like the rad femmes are not wrong to say she's an abuse victim. She looked like an abuse victim. It sounded like one. I'm going to have to go in a minute because I'm getting a bit fucking shattered, to be honest. I'm starting to get quite hungry. Binary Eclipse says, I'm starting to get a picture of what the circle of lust in hell must look like. Yeah, it must look sad right at the end of it. Henry says, I feel like millennials are all sarky because we're dissociating that this girl is. Something is wrong, we know it, but we're too deep in to admit it. And where would you go? Like, you're trapped in this, right? And I agree. No, I think this is really on the money, actually. Like, I think all of the sort of millennial irony humor and irony cartoons and things like this, all these series, this is all because of a lack of sincerity, because if you sincerely looked at the world you're living in, and not just the world you're living in, but the moral connection, again, this sort of the warm, fuzzy feelings that people used to have, and you'd see them everywhere. Like, go back and watch, like, people talking from, like, the 1960s, 1970s, like, older people. You see, they live in this much fuzzier world than the millennials do. And the millennials feel just very sad. And the Gen Xers are like this. You know, my generation are like this, where we have it still, but it's protected around. But I'm not even sure the millennials had it. And this woman has completely lost it. Like, the Gen Zers completely lost it. But yeah, I think a lot of it is too deep to admit. This is terrible. Cosmeronaut says, I remember watching your anti-SJW videos back in the day thinking, man, these people are nuts. Glad this will never go anywhere. Yeah, I know, right? Like, you know, I hate to say that I was right, but man, was I right. The Geth says, the fact there's 100 men willing to walk past each other while still dripping as gross. Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, that's the point, isn't it? Like, of course there are. Like, Madstalk says, I've been thinking a lot about the afterlife recently. A long time ago, you were considered married or spiritually connected to those you've been with. If true, she just split her soul 100 times. Yeah. There's definitely something going on here, isn't there? Leshanoin says, one of the most pitiable things I've ever witnessed. That mother is a monster. How could she do this? She carried her daughter as a baby. Yeah. I can't even imagine it. Like, what's really funny as well is that my wife became insanely conservative when it came to our oldest, right? Insanely conservative. Like, she's not going to hang out with a boy ever. She's like 11. It's like, I mean, I was like, yeah, come on, you know. Yeah, but she was like, no, it's not happening. Super on patrol when it came to this sort of stuff. She's just like way more strict than I was, and that's how the mothers should be, like, carefully guarded of the innocence of their daughters. That's what they should be like, and because they should remember their own experiences. Anyway, I think I've come to the end, so thank you. This Benjamin says, you're a good father. Your kid deserves better than Churchill. Give him Thomas Carlyle. Don't turn your son into a Tory boy. Ask him. Calm down. Churchill's writing on England is superb. You can tell the man genuinely loves England. I'm sure I'm not going to turn my son into a Tory boy. But you'll get to Carlyle eventually. I don't want him to have anything. Like, Carlyle's quite dark. It's got a grim sense of the world. Churchill's got a heroic narrative for England. I think it's important that we imbue our children with the heroic narratives of their own cultures, civilizations, people, the genders that they are. They should feel themselves to have a heroic purpose in life. And it's terrible. And this is why the millennials are so fucking debauched, because they had that stripped away from them. You know, to the millennials, there are no fucking heroes. And that's awful. That's so awful. At least the Gen Xers had Dave Lister. See you next time, guys.